All right, what's going on, everybody? We are going to get this thing ready. Hold on 1 second. I got to get my guy in here. Let's see. So how this is going to work, we are going to do one singular lottery simulation, full 2-round mock draft. I was going to use my big board, but I only have like 50 players on it because not all the players that I want are available to throw into the big board. And I am going to have somebody join us today. Welcome in, Ice. What's going on, brother? How are you?
What's up, man? What's going on?
Not too much, man. I was kind of just going through the little baseline of how we're going to do this today. So pretty much, I'm going to use my big board, I think. I only have, I believe, 49 players on it because there are certain players who I feel should be within the second round that they don't have updated onto this website yet. So I'm going to try it out with mine. Hopefully, it still loads in other players. Actually, you know what? As a matter of fact, let's see if it works first. But if it doesn't, I'll just use the regular draft board that I have, and we'll go over my big board, see what we're thinking about some of the placements of where I have players getting drafted, and we'll do it that way. So let me see if it does work.
All
Let's
right.
see. Have you been watching college? All right. So if I go here, mine is all here. Okay. No, it does show the rest of them. All right. So yeah, we'll use my board. Um, all right. So let's go over to the lottery simulation. We're going to do one and one only, so this way it's fair. I know we're Nets fans here, but we'll try and keep it as fair as possible. So first lottery simulation of the day. This is how we're going to do it. This draft is also going to have trades that I propose that I think have some form of realistic opportunity of happening. So that's how we're going to do this. Let me take off the comment so this way you guys can see. Is it working now?
Yep. There you go. I'm here. I'm back. Yeah, I've been watching a lot of college ball, man. I've been checking out the college ball. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, there's been a bunch of good games lately. I was just watching a few the other night. For those of you who don't know, also, I did start a college basketball page. If you guys want, feel free to follow it. It's called CBB Draft U. If you want the most up-to-date mock drafts, big boards, some of the final scores from around the league, big performances, go follow us over there on Instagram. But it looks like the simulation didn't happen. All right, so I'm going to do it now. This is the first simulation of the day, and this is how it falls. So the Pelicans land the number 1 pick. The Utah Jazz will get the 2nd overall pick, Washington at 3, and the rest as follow. So let's do it. We're going to start it off. Like I said, we are going to do trades with this as well. So, Ice, if you want to confirm whether or not you think a trade is good or not, we'll do it that way. So this way we can keep things as realistic as possible. I've kind of worked on a few of them myself, so we'll see what we can have cooking. Gary, what's going on, man? JB, welcome. We are going to do all teams for this, full 2 rounds. We'll see what happens towards the later end of the second round because there are a lot of prospects around that frame where, it just depends on who you like. So I'm going to go based more on fit towards the end of the second round. For the start, though, of the entire first round, I'm going to go based on talent, current rankings that I have, and stuff of that nature. So let's get it. First overall pick, the New Orleans Pelicans. This is not the team that I want here, just because it really doesn't make sense for them. But you're not going to pass up on the opportunity to get him. Maybe it opens up opportunities to trade Zion Williamson this offseason. So with the first overall pick, the New Orleans Pelicans select Cooper Flagg, the 6'9" forward out of Duke. You can see the stats on screen there. Absolutely dismantling the college basketball scene. I said it in the last one that I did about 2 weeks ago. He struggled at the beginning of the season offensively, and he's really seemed to find consistency from three, which was a big question mark. But his defensive presence is some of the most mature that you've seen in an 18-year-old. And just as a reminder, he started off the college season at 17. So, this is going to be one of the youngest players in this year's draft, and the potential that he has is absolutely out of this world. Ice, what are your thoughts on Cooper Flagg this season? What do you see him doing in the NBA? And if the Pelicans did actually end up getting the number 1 pick, how would you feel with him going there? Ice, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
I was saying Cooper Flagg, first overall pick. It wasn't really the player that I wanted to go to New Orleans, but if New Orleans got him, how would you feel with his fit there? And what do you think that would mean for Zion Williamson?
Oh, that would be perfect if they traded Zion. That'd be a new start for them. You know what I mean? And they have a guy going forward that can do everything, just as I'll say better than Zion. Well, Zion is a different type of player, but as far as being an all-around player, Cooper Flagg, if you starting over, he's probably a good prospect to have.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, with Trey Murphy, Herb Jones coming back from injury next season, DeJounte Murray still there. For me personally with New Orleans, I'm hoping they don't land top 3 because I don't see any of the top 3 actually being a big help for them, especially if they do want to keep Zion. In most mock drafts that I do, I have them selecting between 5 through 7. Just based on how the lottery works with this system that I use. So usually I have them going Kaman Malawak, Trey Johnson, VJ Edgecombe. Those to me are better fits, but like you said, I mean, if they decide to move off of Zion and get a haul in return for him, it's starting off with Cooper Flagg and Trey Murphy as your building blocks is definitely not a bad route to go. With the second overall pick, the Utah Jazz, I think these are the only 2 picks this year that are solidified, set in stone, the number 1-2 punch, and that's Dylan Harper, point guard out of Rutgers. We've already seen his dad comment on him not wanting to go to Utah, that he would request a trade immediately. But for the sake of this, Utah, again, this is another team that I don't want to see go after Harper simply because I think they have a lot of guard prospects. Isaiah Collier or Keontae George. So to me, yeah, of course you're going to want Dylan Harper over any of those 2. But again, I think this is a team that more so needs a wing. I don't see them going Ace Bailey at 2, though. And like I said, they already have guard help. So if you're going to go for one and you're going to go for the best available prospect, I think that's Dylan Harper. And like I said, no matter who the teams are drafting 1 or 2, these are the only 2 players that I see going in the 1-2 order. Picks 3 through 10 are very interchangeable as of right now. I don't think there's anybody set in stone as the third overall pick. And that's actually going to bring us there, which currently is Washington. For this instance, we are going to go Ace Bailey. In many instances, as of late, as you can see by my big board here, I actually have Ace at 4. And the reason for that is simply because VJ has just blown up in the college basketball scene over the past 2-3 weeks, maybe over a month now, where he's just been so consistent on both ends of the floor, and the athleticism that he brings really does remind me a lot of like an Anthony Edwards, a guy who can play both ends of the floor as a 2-way star. He started off the season very rough, was slipping outside of out of the top 10 almost on most mock drafts. But as of now, I have him projected at 3, depending on the team. But for this instance with Washington, I definitely think a wing is more of need. So Ace Bailey, forward out of Rutgers. So the Rutgers guys go back to back. There's the stats on screen, 18.7 rebounds on 46% from the field. They did play today. He had an absolute stinker. I believe he shot 23.5, 27% from the field, somewhere within that range. It was a rough night for him. And here comes Charlotte. And this is the team that I would absolutely love to see draft VJ Edgecombe, especially if there is a world where they can keep LaMelo Ball. If you have a big 3 of LaMelo, VJ Edgecombe, Brandon Miller, and you have to remember too, I don't think they're in a position to where they can trade Mark Williams simply because of his failed physical. Not many teams are going to give up the price tag of what the Lakers gave up, which was Dalton Connect uh, and 2 first-round picks. They're not going to get that anymore for him. So I think for them, they're going to have to try and keep Mark Williams. And if they can find a way to hold on to LaMelo, I think VJ just makes perfect sense, filling out a nice starting 5 of young prospects in LaMelo, VJ Edgecombe, Brandon Miller, Tajon Saloon, and then Mark Williams. Ice, I want to get your thoughts on this. Are you on the VJ hype train? Do you see him as a potential 3rd overall pick, if not 4th, or do you have guys over him currently?
I see VJ as 4, but
Okay.
I think what you said for Charlotte, if they do keep, he is like the perfect fit for them. He's like, he could be like the X factor if they can keep Mark. And you said keep Melo, like he's exactly what they need. Explosive. He's different from Brandon Miller. He's different from LaMelo, and they don't have anyone like that on their roster. So he is like perfect for them.
Definitely. No, I definitely agree. And see, that's the difficult part, right? Is right now Charlotte, I believe, is the 3rd worst team in basketball. Um, say there is a world that they land the 3rd overall pick. I do actually see VJ getting selected over Ace, right? And because this is really where I start to talk about fit. When you have the possibility to draft one of VJ or Ace Bailey to put alongside Brandon Miller and LaMelo, to me, I don't think Ace and Brandon Miller can really coexist. They're both very similar in play style. Both need to put on a little bit of weight, be a little bit more consistent, be a little bit better on the defensive end. So when it comes to fit, I think VJ Edgecombe by far fits the criteria of everything that the Charlotte Hornets need. So VJ at 4, I love this pick for them. And at 5 is the Toronto Raptors. And here's where I'm going to switch it up. A lot of mock drafts are starting to do this, but I've been on this for a little bit as well. I actually have Toronto going with the Duke center, the rawest prospect in this entire draft class. Come on, Malawak. To me, you need to find the Jakob replacement at some point. And I think this is a player who, Toronto shouldn't be tanking again next season. You got Brandon Ingram, you have Scotty Barnes, you have RJ Barrett, who they may look to flip for more additional pieces. I think Malawak, with the proper development within a year, could be a very dominant center in this league. He can space the floor. As you can see, he shoots 69% from the field. It's not on a lot of touches so far, but when he plays minutes, he is very dominant out there for Duke. And I definitely can see them needing the Jakob replacement for when he is to be traded or leave in free agency at some point. So Malawak here goes at 5. What are your thoughts on this, Ice? Is this too early for him? Do you see this being a good fit for him in Toronto? What are your thoughts on it?
It's not too early for him. I agree with you because when you got all the pieces they have, like that is the only piece that they, they really don't have centers like that. So for them to draft him instead of Trey or point guard or anything like that, like he's another one that's a perfect fit for that team. Like 7'1", 250. Like you said, floor spacer. He can do everything, a little bit of everything too. So he's perfect for them. I agree.
Definitely. And I know that I mentioned I was going to do trades at the start of this. We went through the first 5 picks with no trades. I'm still thinking whether or not we should or shouldn't. I'm going to do a couple of trades here and there. Usually I have a little bit more, though. If you haven't seen it already, like I said, go follow my college basketball Instagram page. It's called CBB Draft U. I actually did a mock draft where I had Phoenix trading up to pick 3 because the pick ended up being San Antonio at 3. And there's been rumors about KD going, to the Spurs potentially. So I did a little fun mock draft on that one if you want to check that one out. That's where more of the crazier trades are happening. For this one, we're going to keep it more realistic. But with the Nets pick, this is a very tough position for them to be in. I actually should update my draft board a little bit more because Kasparis, I don't think should be this high. He's been very inconsistent and having a ton of issues over the past few games. So I think his ranking may drop a little bit, even if it's just a slot or two. But to me, Brooklyn is really in desperate need of a point guard, of a wing presence, and of a center. And in this one, the Nets are not really known for drafting the top person on the board. It's more so about the fit and the potential of the player. So for me, it's going to be a little bit of a what are you thinking type of pick, but Jeremiah Fears at 6. This is a guy who is shooting up draft boards. Over the past 6 games for him, he has just been absolutely going crazy. He's leading Oklahoma, who originally wasn't even close to being in line for the March Madness tournament, and now they are very close to being in it, depending on how they play in their conference play tournaments. So Jeremiah Fears at 6, you can say it's too early, you could say it's crazy, but he reminds me a ton of a combo Westbrook and Ja. He brings the athleticism. He can shoot, from all 3 levels of the court. Like he's got it all in him. There's some defensive things that I'd like to see him work on, but again, as a 6'4" guard, you really can't ask for anything more. Currently averaging 16, 4, and 4. Jeremiah Fears at 6, Ice. Are you happy as a Nets fan, or is this something that you're not a fan of?
I love it. But you're right. It's a difficult position to be in when you got Trey on the board and you got Jeremiah. I do believe Casper is dropping down. So between him and Trey, it's a really tough choice. If you miss out on Ace and you got Trey, which is second best creator, I would say, shot maker creator on the board, but then you got Jeremiah, who was a young up and coming point guard, just came out of nowhere and showed flashes of everything and ended up in the lottery, then it's a hard choice. But I love Jeremiah. I'm fine with Jeremiah as a pick.
I definitely agree. And see, this is the tough part about doing these mock drafts. I did a completely different one the other day that I posted to Instagram, which had, Trey Johnson in the top 5, Kaman Malawach in the top 5, VJ going number 3, Ace going 4. Like there was moving parts to it. But it all depends on the team. So for this lottery simulation, it completely changes things. And that starts off too with this pick here in OKC. They land the 7th overall pick with the 76ers top 6 protected pick. So Philly misses out by 1. OKC ends up getting another first-round pick, which is just beyond me. I don't get how they keep doing this.
Right.
And again, this is where I'm going to take a different turn. I think that Con Kneppel is the best fit if OKC is to keep this pick. Trey Johnson by far has the most potential, but he's just not a fit next to SGA, and they're in win now mode. Con Kneppel, though, is a guy that you can plug in as a 3-and-D type of player. He is lights out from 3. He's currently shooting 46.2% from the field, averaging 14 points almost at Duke. I think OKC does take the risk on drafting him higher than what people expect, simply because they can. I mean, they have Isaiah Joe, they have Aaron Wiggins, they have Jalen Williams, Chet. Like, they have so many pieces to this team, with SGA being the MVP favorite now. There's really nothing more that they need to do other than draft the perfect fit. And when you're talking about perfect fit, I think Con Kneppel you could plug in immediately as a sharpshooter off the bench to catapult them into contention even further than what they currently are. Con Kneppel at 7, Ice. Is it too early to OKC? Is it the right fit? What do you think?
I think I was thinking about it and seeing Trey. I think they will probably go for Trey, but I do think it's not too early for him because, like you're saying, the way their team is already constructed, they don't have like a legit 3-point threat, like just catch and shoot guy, and he is the one on the board. You know what I mean? So he would be a perfect fit for them too. You know what I'm saying? Because they got everything else: centers, wings, point guard. They got everything. So he, you know what I mean? Like picking him is a cakewalk for them.
I definitely agree. And like I said, listen, there's teams in the NBA that don't specifically draft on the player ranked the highest on the board. There's a lot of guys who will go for fit, who will go for upside. Look at Brooklyn, for example. I believe we drafted Noah Clowney with what? Pick 21, 22, or 23 when he was coming out of the draft. He was projected early second rounder. And I myself was like, why the hell are we taking him in the first round?
I said the same thing.
Yeah. So, there's hidden gems in different places in the draft, whether it be inside the lottery. Tajon Saloon was another example last year of a guy who wasn't even projected top 10, but went 6 to Charlotte. So there's definitely, if you see the player that you feel fits the need best, you go for him, no matter what the position is of your draft pick. And I think that's what OKC does there if they do land 7. Chicago, though, again, this is where it could get very interesting, but I also think they're in a rebuild mode. So for me, I would usually have Colin Murray-Boyles going here. He has been lighting it up over the past 3 weeks at South Carolina. The record doesn't show for it. but I definitely can see them going best available simply because they're in a bad rebuild. Like they screwed themselves out of DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine packages. Nikola Vucevic is now still there somehow. I definitely can see them going with Trey Johnson. I think this is a solid fit for him. They're going to have to rebuild that guard room that they have of Kobe White, Ayo Dezuma, Lonzo Ball. There's definitely moving pieces there that can get selected. So Trey Johnson at 8. Again, I usually have him in my top 6. I also usually have him slipping to San Antonio in certain instances, but for this one, he will not. And at pick number 9, somebody who I did have slip in this draft is Kasparis. Like I said, usually I have him going to Washington if they select at 5. Sometimes I have him going between 4 through 7. In this instance, I think because of how his play has been inconsistently over the past couple of games, that he could slip in the draft if the draft was today. So for me at pick number 9, I'm going to go with Kasparis over to San Antonio. A lot of people have him in their top 5. The stats still show that he is a great prospect, 15, 5, and 5 a night on 45.5% shooting. But overall, I think that you're going to start to see him slip, especially if a guy like Jeremiah Fears, Con Kneppel light it up in the March Madness tournament. I think those are two guys that just have more upside than him. At pick number 10, it is the Portland Trailblazers. Again, earlier in the year, I would have Asa Newell going here at 10 to them. But like I said before, this is a player who's been shooting up draft boards for me, and that's Colin Murray Boyles, the sophomore forward out of the University of South Carolina. He has been putting on some monster performances, and as you can see, 17 points, 8 rebounds on 59% from the field. A sneaky top 10 guy. Like, there's not a lot of people talking about this yet. A lot of people have him still lottery. He was as far back as the late teens in one point of the season, but I brought him back up to 10. What are your thoughts? Have you seen much of Colin Murray Boyles lately?
Yes, and I didn't have him high, but I looked at him like you said in the teens, and I was thinking because of his height that might make a difference. But I was thinking like, is he like a Jimmy Butler type player too? Right, at that height and that weight, and seeing how he scores around the basket easily, and like you said, like you know what I'm saying, like he's a different type player, and his name comes up a lot. And I do think because they might move off of one of the players, the power forward they have, they might need a player like him anyway. So that'll be a good pickup for them.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree because they have so much young talent over there. They brought in Donovan Clingan. They still have the DeAndre Ayton contract, which is horrible. So I don't see them going Derek Queen. They have a ton of guards. They still have to move off of Anthony Simons at some point, who I feel like as NBA fans, we've been kind of just waiting for him to get traded the past 2 years.
Yes.
So I think, with Scoot, Shaden Sharp, Denny, Termani Kamara, Donovan Clingan, they have a really good youth movement going on at each position. So for here, I think Colin Murray Boyles is by far the best pick available for them. The Miami Heat, they have Kel'el Ware, they have Bam Adebayo. So I'm not going Derek Queen here, and this is where I can see some slipping happening in this year's draft. I think the best fit for them is Liam McNeely. If you guys haven't watched UConn, he is a very solid offensive player, great from 3, and I think he just matches the Miami culture that they try and build over there. He's not too flashy, but he gets the job done, and I think that that's exactly what they need over there. Averaging 15.6 rebounds, only 40% from the field, but again, Miami can draft literal garbage off the street and turn him into a high-level player. So for me, Liam McNeely at 11 makes a ton of sense. And this is where, again, it gets a little interesting. I'm actually going to propose our first trade of the day, and it's going to be with Brooklyn. I do see Brooklyn making... Actually, you know what? I'm going to actually hold off for one pick. I'm going to actually take Asa Newell here at 12 to Houston. I think at some point they're going to make a monster move for a player. If it is Kevin Durant, I could definitely see Jabari Smith being put into that package. So I think they're going to want a replacement young, taller, lengthy, athletic forward. So I'm going to have them take Asa Newell, and we're actually going to have the Nets do a trade with Dallas, who is currently at 13, and that's going to be Cam Johnson heading to Dallas. So they have Kyrie, they have Anthony Davis, they have a ton of depth over there, but dealing with a bunch of injuries, they're still a team that's going to be looking to win now. And they can also add later picks to add more veteran type of college players who can fit into their system a little quicker rather than drafting a young player they need to develop. So for me, pick 13 over to Dallas. And again, I'm not too sure how it would work with the player coming back in return to Brooklyn. So I'm going to keep it as basic as possible. Pick 13 to Brooklyn, Cam Johnson, a pick and a future pick to Dallas. So we're going to give them pick 23 for 13, and we're also going to give them Cam Johnson and a future first. So I'm going to type this up. What are your thoughts? Do you think if Dallas lands in the lottery, they'd be willing to trade with Brooklyn, especially knowing that they're going to try and have to keep Kyrie and AD happy?
I don't think so. I don't think
Really?
Brooklyn. I don't think Cam Johnson is the fit for them. I can see him over there because I think their team is almost complete, right? To a certain extent, they got a lot of wings. I feel like they need another. They probably need another point guard behind Kyrie because they got Dinwiddie over there. So I don't know, and they got centers. So I don't think, and they got the wings. So I don't think Cam is the fit for them. I don't know who would be the fit for them as a trade, but you know what I'm saying?
Because if you're looking at their salaries currently, right, it looks like they're actually underneath the first apron, surprisingly. And I did not know that. I thought they were above the first apron. But you have guys in here, right? You have Max Christie, who's younger. Derek Lively really hasn't been able to stay healthy nor make the impact that a lot of people thought he was going to. You know, your wings consist of Najee Marshall, which he's looking great right now. Caleb Martin, they brought back on a long-term deal. He's there for 4 years. You know, they have PJ Washington, who I've heard rumors of them potentially looking to move off of. Klay Thompson, he's only aging more and more. To me, it's interesting, right? I mean, we could do Nick Claxton here if you want instead. You want to go Nick Claxton trade? Because I think Nick Claxton's a perfect fit next to Anthony Davis, if you ask me. And he's got the connection with Kyrie.
But they still got Gafford
And Lively.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't see it with them. But if they're gonna move off PJ Washington, then maybe I could see Cam Johnson. If they move off PJ, then I could see that happening. They need another wing.
Okay, so you want to go back a pick then and do the trade with Houston? Because so originally how I have it is I usually have Brooklyn make a move with either San Antonio, Houston. Those are usually the two lottery teams I have us make moves with. You want to go back to Houston and do the Cam Johnson trade there? Because I know they've had interest in him.
That probably would be better because they don't have a wing like Cam Johnson over there either. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
I definitely agree.
Yeah, either way, because if you do move off PJ Washington, then you can use a Cam Johnson, right? And then in Rockets, they don't have a Cam Johnson, period. You know what I'm saying? So you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
they're trying to win too. Yeah.
Definitely agree. All right, so what we'll do is we'll send them pick 22 for 12. We'll give them Cam Johnson and a future first. And what we could do also with this, which honestly makes a ton of sense for both parties, is Houston owns the swap right to our 2027 pick. What we could do is just convey that completely, so this way they keep their own pick in 2027 as well as ours. I think that's something that would entice them, especially knowing that they already have future draft capital from Phoenix. So more so just getting the guarantee that they get our pick in 2027. I think that's kind of a realistic trade of how it could work out. What do you think? Do you think they would ask for future picks, or do you think they would ask for their 2027 swap right with us to just be their own pick guaranteed? And
probably the swap right. They swap it out.
Okay. Let's see for this pick 22 and future first. We'll just list it as this. We know what it actually is, but so Brooklyn moves up into the lottery. Like I said, I see Houston and San Antonio being the two main targets for trade ups with Brooklyn. Because what this allows Brooklyn to do is, and the pick is obvious here. You already know who I'm going with. Derek Queen, the big man out of Maryland. I think that this is just a perfect fit, especially knowing that Day'Ron Sharpe is potentially not coming back. He's a free agent. You have to bring back Cam Thomas. Um, there's question marks on Claxton's future. If there's a world where they do end up trading him eventually for a star, that'll be great. But I think drafting 2 lottery picks this year at least solidifies you as a team who's looking to develop their young players. And bringing in Jeremiah Fears and Derek Queen, who have been absolutely dominant in college, I think match very well with what Brooklyn's trying to build scheme-wise in Jordi Fernandez's system. I know you're a big Derek Queen guy too. At least I think. What are your thoughts on Derek Queen in Brooklyn, potentially as a Nick Claxton or Day'Ron Sharpe replacement?
I like Queen. I'm not huge. I'm more Jeremiah than Queen, but I am a fan of Queen. So the thing I think you're right as far as how Jordi would want to run the system. A point guard who pushes the pace, and you have a big man that's a hub. Would make sense. That's what Day'Ron and Claxton. I thought Day'Ron would be able to do it, but Queen is better. Clearly, he can be a hub. So I think you're correct on that. You know what I mean?
Definitely. And I'm actually going to do a secondary trade. This is going to be non-Nets related, but we are going to do a move with Dallas. I do still believe Dallas is a team that will not stay in the lottery if they have the opportunity to, because of how much win now mode they are in. They got to make Kyrie happy for him to re-sign. Anthony Davis, they're trying to figure it out with him. They have the depth to do it, but I think they're one missing piece away. So what I'm going to do is give them some draft capital. Utah and Danny Ainge moving pick 19 and 45 after drafting in the top 5 of this one. We're going to give Dallas 19 and 45 for 13. Utah's also going to throw in an additional first-round pick. So Utah throws an additional first. And that's how we're going to do it. Dallas moves back a couple of slots. Utah moves up. And I can see Utah going with Asa Noel here. It's strange with some of the teams that you're trying to move up with. Like teams like Utah, Washington, Brooklyn, those are teams that have multiple picks, whether it be in the first or the second round. Utah and Brooklyn specifically having a ton of draft capital in the future that they can look to move up with in this draft class. Utah is still trying to figure out things with their entire roster. They have Lauri Markkanen, who they've wasted his last 2 years of his career because they're trying to tank and it's never working. They still have John Collins, who they need to trade. I think with Taylor Hendricks getting injured as well, it's going to cause a major pause in his development if he's ever even able to be the same. It was a nasty leg injury earlier in the season. So I think drafting Asa Noel here makes a ton of sense for them. Moving up 6 spots to grab another young upside player alongside Dylan Harper. He's a rim threat, rim protector. The floor spacing isn't fully there yet, but it's definitely room to improve. Asa Noel at 13. Utah Jazz trade up to 13. Ice, what are your thoughts?
He's another perfect fit for them. You know what I mean? As you said, Hendricks went down. They got a lot of point guards and somewhat wings, but as far as having somebody else as a power forward, they don't really have that down there. So that'd be good. And like you said, John Collins, his time should be up with them. He should be moving on. So yeah, they want to get younger. That's a good fit.
Definitely. And with centers off of the board, they have Onyeka Okongwu, who's actually been playing really well. But there's a lot of question marks on Trae Young's future with Atlanta. So to finish off the lottery, and we'll go over the lottery, do a quick recap before we move into the later first-round picks. I'm going to have Atlanta select Igor Demin, BYU point guard. They have him listed here as a shooting guard, but we all know he's a point guard. 11 points, 5.6 assists, and 3.7 rebounds. He's been very inconsistent, to say the least. This was a guy who was projected in the late 20s of this year's draft before college started. I was big on the Igor train during, before the season began and during the first 3 weeks of the season, where he bumped all the way up to, being talked about as a potential top 5 pick. He's now down on my board to 14. He could very well drop to all the way, maybe to like 17, depending on how he plays in this tournament. But Igor Demin as the potential Trae Young replacement. They have Zachariah Rishashar. They have Onyeka Okongwu. They have Jalen Johnson. I think if you're looking for the perfect fit alongside 2 versatile bigs in Jalen Johnson and Onyeka Okongwu, you might as well put one of the best playmakers in this draft, if not the best playmaker, in Igor Demin. So Igor Demin rounds off our lottery at pick number 14. We're going to go over the picks here, but Ice, what are your thoughts real quickly on Igor potentially being the Trae Young replacement?
Well, he is a big point guard that'll make that team bigger. And if they are moving off Trae, they definitely need a point guard that they don't have. And he will.
Mhm.
I think he is dropping down the boards a little bit because you said he hasn't been performing well. But like you said, he is probably the best passer in the draft right now. So that'll be a fit for them too.
Definitely. And here it is, the lottery so far. We are going to move on to the rest of the picks here shortly, but we got Cooper Flag going number 1, Dylan Harper being number 2. I think those are the only 2 unanimous picks we have so far. Ace Bailey in this scenario goes number 3 with VJ at 4 to the Charlotte Hornets. Come on, Malawak jumps all the way up to 5 to the Toronto Raptors. Jeremiah Fears making a big jump as well, going number 6 to Brooklyn. Con Kneppel, another player making a jump in this draft, going number 7 to OKC. At pick number 8, we got Trey Johnson going to Chicago. You know, Josh Giddey's a restricted free agent. Like I said, they have a ton of room to fix within that guard room that they have. Kobe White was already mentioned in trade rumors. Lonzo Ball is never really healthy. Iota Zuma is who he is. I don't really think he's got much upside anymore. You know, so I definitely think reshaping their guard room could be important. Kasparis falls all the way to 9 in this one and lands in San Antonio. Colin Murray Boyles at 10, Liam McNeely at 11. The only trade up, or this one of 2 trade ups that we did in the lottery. Brooklyn moves all the way up with Houston, trading pick number 22, Cam Johnson, and a future first round pick for pick number 12. Brooklyn selects Derek Queen. Utah, another trade up with Dallas, going with Asa Newell, the 6'11 forward from Georgia, and rounding off the lottery, Igor Demin as the potential Trae Young replacement. Overall thoughts, what would you grade the lottery 1 through 10 if you had to say, Ice?
I would probably say 9 or 10 to for those teams that drafted in the lottery. Those are good players to pick up for each team that they landed on.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, realistically, like it's so tough doing these, especially when you're doing only one lottery simulation. Like in most instances, I don't have New Orleans picking 1. You know, usually Charlotte's in the top 3. Washington usually falls to like 4 or 5. Um, it's a little tough when you're not used to doing this specific format. But I think overall, I'd give it like an 8. There's certain things that I may have wanted to change. I definitely don't think we go 11 picks without a trade up. So that may be the only thing that I trade looking back, maybe doing a move with San Antonio where we do like a hypothetical Kevin Durant trade. But again, I don't know if they would do that at 9. I think that's more so if San Antonio finds a way to drop into like the top 6, maybe they look to do that. But overall, yeah, I'd give this like an 8 or a 9 so far. Moving on to pick 15, the Orlando Magic with their first pick of the draft. I mean, this is a tough to pass up, honestly, if you're Orlando. They need wings, they need shooting, and I think you can't really match a perfect description to anyone else other than Rasheer Fleming. This is one of my favorite, most underrated players in this year's draft class. He is a junior, so the upside isn't really there. A lot of times when you're drafting a junior or senior out of college, they're kind of who they are. But I think Rasheer Fleming could be a perfect bench piece to what they need, right? Depth-wise in Orlando, they have a lot of guards. They really lack size, physicality, but also floor spacing. They're one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the entire NBA. So Rasheer Fleming, the junior St. Joe's power forward, currently averaging 15.6 points, 8 rebounds, and 57% from the field. Ice, if you want to real quickly look up what his three-point percentage is, but for my knowledge, I believe he's a slightly above 30% three-point shooter. I could be wrong on that, but from some of the highlights that I've seen of him in some of the games I've watched, he can definitely space the floor, and there's a lot of room for growth for him in the NBA, even as a junior. And not to mention 6'9", 240 pounds, he can definitely be dominant on the boards.
I think Rasheer is at 40% three-point shooting now.
Is he at 40% so far? Wow.
Yeah,
I mean, like that's exactly what I think Orlando needs. Usually, I mean, Orlando did have a lottery pick 2 weeks ago, and I was giving them usually Liam McNeely or Con Kneppel, but I don't think you can get a better consolation prize if you're really looking for a wing shooter than Rasheer Fleming. And he also brings the physicality that I think those two don't. So Orlando being a team that's trying to contend, I can definitely see this being a perfect fit for them at 15. And with San Antonio back on the board, they took Kasparis at number, what was that, 9 we had them going. I could see a trade here, but I'm going to hold off from it. I'm actually going to go with the French connection for Victor Wembanyama, and that's going to be Noah Esengwu. I actually just saw that he had a game today, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to pull up the stats from that game. So this way we can go over his game a little bit. Yeah, today he had 20.6 rebounds and assists, 2 steals. He shot 7 of 10 from the field, 6 of 6 from the free throw line. You know, at 6'8", with his versatility and his size, I definitely think San Antonio is, you know, they're really not in a position to where they need to draft the prospects that they're drafting. This is more so stashing away players similar to how OKC did and just waiting to make the right move, right? They have Keldon Johnson, they have Devin Vassell, they have Jeremy Sochan, they have Malachi Branham, they have multiple first-round picks this year. I definitely see them making a package in the offseason after the draft for a guy like Kevin Durant, Giannis, like somebody of that nature. They have the draft capital to do it. And with the question mark of Wemby's health moving forward, with the blood clots that he's dealing with, you could definitely expect them to make a massive move, especially after acquiring De'Aaron Fox. So Noah Esengwu here at 16 to the Spurs. And up next is OKC. And this is where I am going to do a trade. We're going to figure out who exactly it's going to be. But let's see. Up next is Minnesota. I don't see them moving up one spot. Is there a team on this list that you see that maybe OKC would want a role player from? I definitely think they need to move this pick. There's just no way they need to draft 3 players this year. I could see Washington being the team at 24, maybe moving all the way up to 17. There's definitely a world there. They drafted Ace. So I could, let's see if we can do Washington. They have multiple second-round picks, I believe, in this draft. Let's see.
Yeah, they do. I think Washington has multiple picks.
I think they have 3, right? Yeah, they have multiple. Let's say 24, 41, and a future first to OKC for 17. I think that's realistic because I also think OKC we're going to have them trade back in the second round for future picks because that's just what Sam Presti does. He's a pick hoarder. So yeah, that's exactly what we're going to do. I'll go back and make the notes to this as well. I'm not going to waste everybody's time typing. But pick 24 and 41 for pick 17. Of course, the future first as well from Washington. But that's how we're going to do it. Washington moves up after selecting Ace Bailey with the 3rd overall pick. I'm going to give them Nolan Traore. I think that they really utilize Jordan Poole as more of a 2 guard, even though I don't necessarily agree with it. Nolan Traore is a former top 5 projected pick before the college basketball season started. He really struggled overseas in France and in the Euro League, but he has started to pick things back up. A lot of people have him ranged between 19 through 23. I can see him going just outside of the lottery. I think the upside is still there. I don't see a point guard like Jace Richardson or LeBarian Phelan getting taken over him. And a team like this, especially in Washington, they could be aggressive in moving up. So I think Nolan Traore is their pick there. No stats because he's overseas, so Fanspo just doesn't have stats for him. If you go on Tankathon, I'm pretty sure they have stats for him over there, though. Minnesota at pick 18 is an interesting one as well because, again, this is a team that kind of needs wing help. But when you have a player like Ben Seraph on the board here, it's kind of hard to pass up on him. But that's exactly what we're going to do. I'm actually going to have them take Hugo Gonzalez here at pick number, I believe this is 19 or 18? This is 18. So Hugo Gonzalez going 18th to the Minnesota Timberwolves. On my board, I have him at 21. He's very similar to like a Liam McNeely, a guy that can space the floor, kind of just give you good minutes. He's not somebody that's going to be too flashy. He can put the ball on the floor, though, and make some creation in his shots. But overall, I think this is a solid fit for them. They need wing depth, and this is just exactly the perfect fit. A guy that can space the floor, can defend, He can do everything. Hugo Gonzalez at 18. And let's just go over these last 4 picks because I haven't really gotten your input, Ice. What are your thoughts on the Noah Sengu, Nolan Traore, and Hugo Gonzalez picks?
They're good picks. Yeah, I think for Minnesota, Hugo, yeah, I would choose him too. I wouldn't have went Ben. I don't think they needed Ben, but Hugo is listed as a small forward, but he can also run, a little bit of point at times and stuff like that. So I think those and Spurs picking up Noah, if that was right, yeah, that's a good pick for them too. That they get really big, they get long, athletic, and that's a good pick. I like the picks for those teams.
Definitely. And you know what it is, too, is Noah Sengu just screams San Antonio Spur. Like, they got Wemby, they have the French connection. And you know they're going to draft a Frenchman at some point. So I think Noah Sengu makes a ton of sense there. Moving on to Dallas after they traded back with Utah. And this is exactly the player that I wanted them to get. Ben Seraph. If they bring back Kyrie, Ben is a player that can play the point guard at 6'6". He is a very good facilitator, can shoot the 3 ball pretty well. I definitely can see them trying to shift him into the point guard so this way Kyrie can play shooting guard. But Ben Seraph at 6'6", I like it. I don't think, he's has incredible upside, but I think in terms of a championship caliber team and what Dallas is currently building, Seraph makes a ton of sense there. At pick number 20 is Miami, and they already had the 11th pick drafting Liam McNeely. I can see them again going with upside, but again, they're also a team that kind of needs a point guard, right? Tyler Hero is playing the point guard. He's doing it very well, as to say the least. I mean, he was an all-star this year, but Terry Rozier is on a 2-year deal. You have to expect him to potentially be a trade piece this offseason, especially as an expiring contract. They have Davion Mitchell. I don't believe they reached an extension agreement with him, so this 1-year deal should be correct. Again, there's no guarantees that he'll come back. I think this is where Jace Richardson lands, and a lot of people are very 50-50 on him. I just watched a game of his for the first time the other day. A very shifty point guard, a solid finisher at the rim, can space the floor. He has an intensity to his game that is of a leader, and it just screams a Miami Heat again. Like, there's certain players that match a Miami Heat system, and I think if you draft Liam McNeely and Jace Richardson, it's a slam dunk for them. So Jace Richardson going at number 20, currently averaging 11 points, 2 assists, 3 rebounds, 52% from the field. The stats don't really show for it what he truly does, but in his last 2 games since I started this Instagram page, he put up today 18 points, 5 rebounds, and 3 assists. And in his previous game, he put up 22 points, 4 rebounds, and 2 assists. So the stats really don't show any love to him on this screen. They're probably not updated as well, but I definitely think that him at 20 is the correct spot for him to go. He was usually projected early second round, if not mid-second round, and he's definitely shot up the draft boards as of the last probably about 2-3 weeks, maybe a little longer, but his name is starting to get brought up a ton. A lot of people actually have him potentially going just outside of the lottery, between like the 15 and 17 range. I don't see it. I think there's a lot of prospects in between that are still better. So him landing at 20 to Miami makes a ton of sense for me. And we're actually going to go back-to-back point guards here. Are we, though, actually? Because I'm now seeing... So here's the interesting part in Ice. I want your input here. Miles Turner is on an expiring deal. There's no guarantee he comes back. Their backup center is Isaiah Jackson currently, right? Who's out for the year. But Tyrese Halliburton really has been struggling. Like, he's really not the guy that we thought he was going to be, right? He had that huge first half of the season last year, made the All-Star game, and then disappeared. He's starting to pick things back up, but again, consistency is really an issue for him. Knowing that they have Halliburton for the next 4 years, do they go point guard and risk not being able to have a center, similar to what New Orleans did last year? Or do they draft the center in Danny Wolf, the junior out of Michigan? What do you see here?
I think they draft the center because if they brought up a center from the G League and it didn't work out, and then so that tells me they're looking for someone. I think they added someone to their roster recently, so definitely they're going to need a center. So Danny Wolf would be a good pickup for them.
Okay. And you know what? Because they're going center, my next question is, and I was going to save him here, but I also realized that we already drafted Derek Queen. So there's no point of Brooklyn holding off for a center. Thomas Sorber is out for the season. It could affect his draft stock. Do you think that Indiana would select Danny Wolf over Thomas Sorber, or is Thomas Sorber the pick here at 21 for Indiana?
I think they would probably go with Danny Wolf, 7 foot.
Really?
Yeah, because a lot of teams, if he does drop down the board, there aren't. I would say just like who was hurt in the last draft? Derek Whitehead. When we drafted Derek, he fell so far, even though he had high potential, could have been a lottery pick. He fell so far to the 20s. You know what I mean? I think Sora might, as good as he is, he might end up the same way, and someone will take a chance later on him.
Okay. I can definitely see that. Yeah, I definitely think the better fit for them is Thomas Sorber, just because Danny Wolf has a playmaking aspect to his game, and he's also a little bigger, so I'm not sure how he's going to fit as a lob threat next to Tyrese Halliburton, but I definitely agree. I think injuries play a factor in sometimes dropping in the draft. And if you're Indiana, you're also a team that's still trying to contend in the East. Bringing in a guy who's played 3 years in college, who's NBA ready, I definitely can see that making sense. And I actually have his last 2 game stats as well, I believe. Today against Michigan State, they got blown out, but he put up 18 points, 13 rebounds, and 4 assists. And the other night, he put up 20 points, 8 rebounds, and 4 assists as well. So he's a guy that can kind of do it all. They're trying to call him the mini Jokic. I'm not sure if I'm believing in it fully, but he definitely has a little bit of upside that still hasn't been tapped into at Michigan. And I definitely can see him being a solid fit, especially when Tyrese Halliburton's struggling. Like, go to your center to play make. Why not? Denver does it all the time with Jokic. So I can see Danny Wolf being a good fit with Indiana. At pick number 22, this is thanks to a trade back with the Brooklyn Nets. So this is their first pick of the draft. And this is where I can see Liberian Phylan going. They have Fred VanVleet on a team option deal, but they really don't have a point guard after that outside of Reed Shepherd. I could see them going point guard again. And I think that's exactly what they do. Liberian Phylan, the Alabama Crimson Tide point guard, currently averaging 11 points, 3.5 assists, 3.2 rebounds. Again, I don't think those stats are fully correct, but that's what we're using for now. I think I have one of his games here as well. In his last game, this was 4 days ago. I think they played recently as well. But he had 19 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. A guy that can kind of do a little bit of everything, has an athletic portion to his game as well. If you look at his size and weight, kind of reminds you of Ja Morant type weight coming out of college at that 177 mark. I think Ja was at like 169, 171, around that range. But at 6'4", he's athletic. He can play make. He can score from all 3 levels of the floor. I definitely can see them trying to select a point guard to help out with what they have going on. They're pretty much set at wings. I mean, they have Dylan Brooks. They have Amen Thompson. They have Jabari Smith. There's talks about them wanting to make a move by using some of that depth that they have, including Cam Whitmore, to potentially go in for a star wing. So I definitely think point guard is their fit there. Brooklyn at 23. We're going to speed run through the first round, and then we'll recap the first round before going into the second round. At pick number 23, if this guy falls to you, you kind of have to take him. His college stats don't show even a smidge of what he can be full potential-wise. He actually reminds me a ton of Tajon Saloon coming out of the draft, because if you remember last year's draft class, the top 10 in that class, maybe one player actually goes in the lottery this year. Like, that's how bad last year's draft class was. So I think comparing this guy to Tajon Saloon coming out of the draft makes a ton of sense. And that's Carter Bryant, 6'8" wing out of Arizona. He has tremendous upside as a two-way player in this league. If you've watched Arizona games, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. If you haven't, I recommend doing it. But the sample size of him playing hasn't been great in terms of the minutes that he's played, the consistency of it. But he is a very raw prospect. He's already 6'8", 220. He's got the frame to be a very good wing in this league. And like I said, he has two-way ability. So I think that's something that Brooklyn's development staff with Jordi Fernandez and the rest of the coaching staff could really tap into. At pick number 24 is OKC. And I'm going to have them sit here because this is just an absolute gem for them to get at 24. They have Isaiah Hartenstein on a multi-year deal, but when his time comes, they're going to need a replacement because they're not going to be able to afford to bring him back, especially with SGA needing a supermax, Jalen Williams needing an extension. Chet already signed his extension, I believe. Actually, I don't think he has. No, he hasn't. Chet needs an extension. Jalen Williams needs an extension. These are all players that they're going to need to pay money to, and that's something that's going to hurt them with the luxury tax. So once Isaiah Hartenstein goes, I can see them going with Thomas Sorber. An absolute steal at pick 24. This is a guy before he got hurt I had projected going between the picks of 17 and 21. For him to fall to 24, I think is just perfect. OKC gets the guy that everybody wishes they didn't, which makes a ton of sense. It happens every year in the NFL with the Eagles. They somehow get the disgruntled, potentially bad PR guy who ends up being a Hall of Famer. Like, it happens every time. OKC is the exact same way. So Thomas Sorber, 14.5 points, 8.5 rebounds. He is probably my favorite non-lottery prospect in this year's draft. I absolutely would have loved to see him in Brooklyn. But again, it really depends on how the picks fall. If you get Jeremiah Fears and you trade it for Derek Queen, there's really no room to bring in Sorber. But if you go, say like an Ace Bailey or a Cooper Flagg with your first pick with Brooklyn, and then go with, a big man, or I'm sorry, a wing or a point guard in that, top 12, if you trade up for him, Thomas Sorber is the guy that I want to see go to Brooklyn with those later 20 picks. At pick number 25 is Brooklyn once again. So this is where I can see them going for a little bit more of a guy who's more of a plug-in and ready to go. And for me, that's Adou Thiaro. We've actually been projected to get him in a couple of mock drafts, but I've been on him for a couple of months now. He is currently dealing with an injury, so he hasn't played recently, but he is just one of those guys that you want on your team because he can be a veteran presence immediately out of college. For him, his comparison to me is Dorian Finney-Smith, but better. I really do think Adou Thiaro has everything to his game that DFS does, but with a smidge more of athleticism. He's able to put the ball on the floor and create his own shot. He's a good catch and shoot 3-and-D player, averaging 15.5 points, 6 rebounds on near 55% from the field. I would absolutely love to see Brooklyn round off their first round with Adou Thiaro. At pick number 26 is Atlanta. And this is a team that you could see go big man, right? They got their point guard, and that's exactly the route that I'm going to go. So at 26, I'm going to have them take Johni Broome out of Auburn. This is the Luka Garza of this year's draft, right? A senior who is playing the best basketball in college, but isn't a top 10 pick, right? People don't really seem to understand why in basketball the best player who, whether they're a junior or a senior, doesn't go top 5. And that's just simply because teams want more upside, a player who is so young that they can kind of develop something into their mindset where they can progress much better than what a senior can. And that's exactly what happens here. Johni Broome falls all the way down to 26. Atlanta grabs their backup big man to Onyeka Okongwu. Johni Broome can come in and actually mentor Okongwu too. I'm pretty sure they're the same age, right? Johni Broome's 22. You can correct me if I'm wrong on Onyeka Okongwu, but I'm pretty sure Okongwu is 21 or 22. So, being able to bring in a guy that you could fit in right away, plug in right away, understands the game of basketball, has a high IQ, incredible scorer, can space the floor. He does it efficiently, and he also is a double-double machine. So Johni Broome at 26 out of Auburn to Atlanta. And that leaves us with pick number 27, the Orlando Magic. After selecting Rasheer Fleming, I'm going to have them select another floor spacer. I think that this is just a perfect fit for them. I don't see them, you could see the team need here with point guard. I don't see them needing a point guard. They have Cole Anthony, they have Jalen Suggs, they have Anthony Black. There's really no need or rush for them to go with a point guard. And for that, I'm going to select Nick Clifford out of Colorado State. You can see the stats. I mean, whether you play at a low-grade Division I or at Duke, if you're putting up 18.5, 4.5 assists, and almost 10 rebounds as a 6'6 guard/forward, you're doing something right. And I think that's, again, another plug-in guy immediately for Orlando. Say one of their point guards go down, he can play it. Say Paolo or Franz goes down, he can play the wing. He can be a great depth piece off the bench next to Rasheer Fleming. So I think adding seasoned college basketball veterans to Orlando is exactly the route that they need to take. Nick Clifford at 27. And at pick number 28, you have the Boston Celtics. This is an interesting pick. I usually have them go Danny Wolf or Johni Broome or Adou Thiaro. So with all three of those guys off the board, I think that you can see them taking maybe a different approach and go with a guy that's more so for developmental purposes. Drew Holiday is on his way out. I would absolutely hate to see him go here, but I could definitely see Boogie Flan going to Boston. I'm a huge Boogie guy. I wanted to see him in Brooklyn, but it just makes too much sense with all three of the guys that I mentioned previously off the board. Um, actually, you know what? This is non-biased. I'm actually going to switch it because I just saw the player who's here. I'm actually going JT Toppin. I just realized that he's been flying up draft boards, and I have him here. I think with Al Horford about to retire at some point soon, at least we think. I think JT Toppin's a perfect fit because Drew Holiday has a couple years in him. They do need a point guard though, and we'll get to that eventually. But with Boogie Flan's injury, I can definitely see him falling a little bit further and Boston wanting more of a guy who's ready now. And I think that's JT Toppin. So bias aside, no, I did not undo the pick for that purpose. But JT Toppin at 28, this is another guy that I want the Nets to grab. So believe me when I say non-bias. He's averaging 18 points, 9 rebounds on 56% from the field, an absolute lob threat, can shoot the three, rebounds at a tremendous rate for his size. I mean, he's 6'9", and as a sophomore at 20 years old, 225, he's got the build to play alongside that contender in Boston. And this is the pick where I think Boogie Flan fits a little bit better. Late first round steal. They're really just a team that kind of needs to draft best available. And I think the young upside in Boogie Flan is absolutely perfect for what the Clippers need. You can see the percentage there. In college, he was not efficient, but he had shown sparks to his games or flashes of his game that really could spark something in terms of a development piece. And at pick number 30, to top off the end of the first round. Pardon, I am getting messages because I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan that the Steelers traded for DK Metcalf, so don't mind me. I'm trying to read at the same time. At pick number 30 is the Phoenix Suns. And this is where it can get interesting because, again, I usually have them go with JT Toppin right there. JT Toppin, though, also for anybody who's wondering how the hell do you have him going in the first round, look at his last 3 weeks of basketball. He was projected mid-second round, and he is all the way up into the first round. For me personally, I haven't seen him in a draft board that goes in the first round. I just think from a personal standpoint, he has no reason not to be. And for that, I have him going 28 to Boston, just to give a little bit more of a better explanation. But at pick number 30 with Phoenix, it's a little strange because all the guys that I would usually have them take are off the board. The two best on the board are shooting guards. They have Devin Booker. I don't see them needing him. We're actually going to go in a little bit of a different route. Will Riley has been so up and down on a lot of draft boards. He was originally projected early 20s. Then he was projected mid-second round. Now he's in the high second round. I think Phoenix would take him. I think this is a perfect fit for them, especially if they move off of Kevin Durant, depending on the package that they can get in return for him. Will Riley is he's a 3-and-D guy. Like, he reminds me a ton of Trey Murphy, minus the athleticism, right? He still has an athleticism to his game. It's just nowhere near along the lines of Trey Murphy. But in terms of a floor spacer, a guy who can put the ball on the floor and score, I think this is a perfect fit for them. Especially knowing that they don't have much to their team. Like, outside of KD, Booker, Beal, and maybe Royce O'Neal and Ryan Dunn, what more do they have? So I think that this is a perfect fit for them at pick number 30. At pick number 31, we're going to go into the second round momentarily. We're going to recap the rest of the first round. Ice, I want to get your thoughts. You've been a little quiet. I know I've been trying to speed run through this, but picks 22 through 30 is what we haven't discussed yet. LeBarian Filan to the Rockets. What are your thoughts on him?
I don't know too much about him. I don't know too much about that pick, but I seen his name everywhere, so I figured he's a good pickup. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And Carter Bryant to Brooklyn. Have you watched Arizona games lately?
I slept on Carter Bryant, and I've been sleeping on Carter Bryant, but recently John brought up Carter Bryant to me, and I took another look at him, and I was like, okay, maybe he'd be a good pickup. He has the size, the height.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, like I said, he reminds me a lot of Tajon Saloon, who's in Charlotte right now. And if you've seen Saloon throughout this season specifically, he didn't really get a lot of minutes. He was spending a lot of time in the G League. His minutes when he was in the NBA weren't that great. But if you look at his game against Brooklyn, he was able to put the ball on the floor and create his own shots. He was able to play make. He was able to rebound very well, finish at the rim very well. I see Tajon Saloon and Carter Bryant, a guy that you don't play at all the first year. Keep him in the G League, play in the last couple games of the season, and just let him develop. Only 18 years old. At 6'8", 225, though, it's a very raw prospect to have on your team. And I think Brooklyn needs to make a mixture of, players that you're focusing on for the future, which is Jeremiah Fears and Derek Queen, players that you want to develop like Carter Bryant, and then players that you can plug in immediately in Adou Thiaro. I think that's perfect for what Brooklyn needs in terms of if these were their picks. At pick number 24, Thomas Sorber. This one pains me because, again, I just can't stand OKC getting good picks. But thoughts on Thomas Sorber as the Isaiah Hartenstein replacement once his contract finishes up?
Well, that's definitely a good pickup. Falls down the draft due to injury, hoping he recovers. At some point, yeah, they're gonna have to pay, and they're gonna have to move off players. So that would be a perfect pickup because he's 6'10", and I usually put him in the Bam Adebayo category of 6'10" guys who could space the floor a little bit mid range, post game. So that would be a good pickup.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, like I said, he is probably one of, if not my favorite, non-lottery pick. So to me, that's just an absolute steal. Adou Thiaro, I'm sure you've heard the name. I have been watching Arkansas games since the beginning of the season. I was really hoping Boogie Fland would stay healthy. I thought they had a lot in them, especially with John Calipari now there. Adou Thiaro at 25, what are your thoughts on him? As more of a plug-in kind of ready-to-go type of guy, similar to Jalen Wilson when we drafted him.
I'm not too familiar with him either.
Really?
Right? Yeah, I'm not too. I've seen his name everywhere. I've seen his name everywhere. I've seen the stats. Seemed like a pretty good player. Everyone says he's a pretty good player, but I've been more thinking of some other folks I would have drafted instead of him. Right? Instead of
who would you have replaced at 25 for Thiaro?
I would have either went with a bigger center. I like Derek Queen, but the league is getting bigger, so I would have want to draft either Kalkbrenner or Maxim Reynard to have another center on board along with Derek Queen.
That's interesting you bring those two up because I actually have them in the second round currently. I know Maxine has gotten some talks about going late first round, like Phoenix specifically, or Boston. I just don't know if I see a senior big man going too early. Like, if you look at how we have our draft set up currently, you have three guys who are, juniors or seniors, where I can definitely see them going there. But in terms of a senior big man, Maxine, where is he playing? Is it Indiana or is it? I know it's a school of red.
Stanford.
It is Stanford. Yes. I just don't know if there's a lot of teams willing to grab some of those older college players. Like Orlando, to me, makes sense. They need to build win now pieces who can be plugged in right away. Boston, it makes sense. The Clippers, they're older, so I think they're going to want to go with youth. And same thing for Phoenix. If they move KD, you're not trying to build a win now team because you clearly gave up. So to me, I don't know if they go with him, but I can definitely see Maxine going first round. I think Kalkbrenner is still more solidified early second round. So we'll get to that now. I mean, Nick Clifford, JT Toppin, Boogie Fland, and Will Riley as the remaining 4 picks of the first round. What are your thoughts on those floor? Nick Clifford going to Orlando, JT Toppin to Boston, Boogie Fland to the Clippers, and Will Riley to Phoenix.
I think those are all perfect places for those players to go. They're all good players. They all have their skill sets. Boogie, quick, fast, point guard, create space. You know what I'm saying? Will Riley, his name has been talked about a lot. You know what I mean? He has trouble creating a little bit, but he can do a little bit of everything. The rest of the players, I think those are perfect fits for those players.
I definitely agree. And that's the funny thing is, like, looking at this draft board currently, like, you could genuinely say last year's draft class, Nolan Traore would have been a top 5 pick, right? Like, Jace Richardson probably would have been in the lottery.
Easy.
Thomas Sorber, even injured, would probably have been lottery. Like, there's so many guys in this year's late first round that last year would have looked like literal generational talents. Like that's how deep this class is, which is why I've been so adamant on Brooklyn keeping as many first round picks as they can this year. I definitely agree with trading up, but there is a world where you can do it without giving up multiple firsts in this year's class. Next year's class, top 1 through 8, I think is much better than this year's 1 through 5. And that's saying something
Definitely.
because originally at the beginning of the year, people were calling this a generational class, which I still believe so. I think this is going to be, when it's all said and done, the deepest, best draft class ever. I mean, you got players that you can get early to mid second round that still have high upside.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
but next year's 1 through 8, I mean, you have Darren Peterson, AJ DeBansta, Cam Boozer, Noah Ament, Caleb Wilson, Caleb Gaskin. There are players in next year's Mikael Brown. There are tons of players in next year's draft class 1 through 8 specifically that I would put above this year's 1 through 5. Like if you were to combine draft classes and do a 2026 and 2025 combined draft, I'm taking Darren Peterson and AJ DeBansta over Cooper Flagg. And
Yeah.
that's saying something because Flagg is a potential generational prospect. Like I would go DeBansta at 1, Peterson at 2, Flagg at 3, Boozer at 4, Harper at 5, Ace at 6. Like that's how my top 6 would look. I would actually potentially put Noah Ament over Ace Bailey. So Ace could potentially fall to 7 if you combine the draft classes. But that's how deep this one is. So to me, I'm just hoping Brooklyn is able to find a way to keep at least 3 of these first round picks this year. So this way they can move up as well. To start the second round, these sons of bitches always do it. Boston. For those of you who don't know, I am absolutely anti-Boston everything. I'm a Yankees, Pittsburgh Steelers, and Brooklyn Nets fan. At some point in time, one of those Boston teams, whether it be football, basketball, baseball, has screwed my team. So I just have a hatred for Boston. It's not my fault. It's your fault. Boston at pick number 1 in the second round. I'm going to have them go Cam Jones. They get a seasoned guy, a senior who's averaging 18 and a half, 6 and 4, a do-it-all guard who can, like I said, be a replacement at some point in time for a Drew Holiday. Derek White can play the 1. I'm not sure how Cam Jones is going to transition into the NBA as a potential 1, but you can see by the 6 assists, he has it in him. So I think bringing in a guy like him who you can plug in immediately is definitely something of interest. At 6'5", I mean, realistically, your bench in Boston at that point would be Peyton Pritchard, Cam Jones, Sam Hauser, JT Toppin, and of course, whatever big man they have off the bench, Luke Cornett, whoever it may be. I definitely think those 2 picks, though, for them and JT Toppin and Cam Jones adds the depth pieces that they've been kind of missing the past couple of years. Realistically, their first 6 players win them championships, so it doesn't matter. But I think having more depth moving on is exactly what they need because eventually age catches up to your players. You know, you're going to need younger guys who can develop, but you also need guys who are going to stay healthy, who are going to contribute. And I think that's perfectly what Cam Jones represents. At pick number 32, second overall pick in the second round, VJ Edgecombe is in Charlotte. So you have LaMelo, you have VJ, you have Brandon Miller. I think this is where you can see a center go. And I'm going to have them take Maxime. I think, in terms of what goes on with Mark Williams is still up in the air. But with a failed physical, I don't think they get the price tag of what they got for him originally in the Lakers trade before it got vetoed. So I think grabbing a solidified big man in Maxime is exactly what you need. I personally haven't watched him play a physical basketball game yet. I've seen a couple of highlights. He's just dominant. I mean, averaging 20 points and 11 rebounds. He is exactly what you need off the bench in Charlotte. And again, they have so many young players that they can go out of their way to draft, a junior, a senior, somebody that they can plug in immediately, somebody that can come in out of college and also help the young guys out of college that they draft. So I think Maxime's a perfect fit there at 32 to Charlotte. And that leaves us at 33 with the Minnesota Timberwolves. And this is, again, a perfect fit for exactly what they need. And that's Yaxel Lendenberg. Again, I haven't watched him play a physical game yet, only highlights, and he's just a beast. Like, he is absolutely dominant on the boards, averaging 17 points and roughly 11 rebounds per game on 54.3% from the field. Somebody that fits the Minnesota build of what they need culture-wise. Anthony Edwards, Julius Randle, Rudy Gobert, gritty players who could use a little bit of help. And I think the biggest help that they need is at the wing position. With them trading up for Rod Dillingham last year, I think they have their point guard of the future. Anthony Edwards, of course, if they're able to keep him happy, that's your superstar. They have Jaden McDaniels, but again, offensively, he's not that great. So I think bringing in Hugo Gonzalez and Yaxel could be huge pickups for them in terms of wing depth off the bench, because their bench has been a big problem this year. So if they want to have any chance of contending in the long term, I think making the right wing picks is exactly what they need. So Yaxel going there at 33. And Charlotte back up at 34. And this is where I'm going to switch it up a little bit. I think they need a little bit of wing depth. And I'm going to have them select UNC's Drake Powell. I usually don't have him go this high, but I think it would be a cool story to see another North Carolina guy play in Charlotte. Drake Powell, again, an underwhelming season for him at UNC. The minutes, the consistency, it has not played in his favor, but he has shown a lot of signs as a potential high-caliber defender. And I think that's something that they'll need. They have the scoring with VJ, LaMelo, Brandon Miller. They have the big man dominance in Maxime, Mark Williams, Tajon Saloon, Miles Bridges. I think they need more of a guy who can just be a lockdown defender. And I think Drake Powell fits that description perfectly. At pick number 35, this is the last pick that we'll do before we recap the first 6 picks, or the first 5 picks of the second round. At pick number 35 is the Detroit Pistons. And this is an interesting pick for them. You don't know what Jaden Ivey's future, as well as Isaiah Stewart's future, is going to look like there. A lot of the time I have them selecting guys like Will Riley, like Yaxel. So a lot of these guys are already off the board for me. But I think they need somebody who can space the floor for Cade once again. I mean, you don't know what Tim Hardaway's future is going to be there. Dennis Schroeder, Malik Beasley, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, all 3 of those guys, of their veterans, are on expiring contracts. So you're not guaranteed to get any of them back. I think they go with the wing help, Alex Karaban from UConn. A floor spacer, averaging 14.5 points, 5 rebounds at 6'8", 225. Again, a junior, a plug-in ready guy. Detroit didn't have a first-round pick. And your second-round picks, you're kind of just looking for hidden players that can fit in immediately. And I think that's exactly what Karaban can do for Detroit, especially with the leap that they've taken as a team, looking like a potential contender. They're definitely a missing piece, like a missing second star away from being a true contender in the East. I would put them at a similar level to what Orlando was last year. So to me, Alex Karaban makes a ton of sense. Let's recap the first couple of picks in the second round. Ice, I want your thoughts. Let's see what we have here. So we have Cam Jones to Boston, Maxime to Charlotte, Yaxel to Minnesota, Drake Powell to Charlotte, and Alex Karaban at 35 to Detroit. I'm sure you saw a couple of the names that were still on the big board. What are your thoughts on these first 5 guys going to start the second round?
All right, first, I'm heartbroken because Karaban went to Detroit. That's my guy. You know what I'm saying? Like, I like Alex Karaban, but they all going to I think the way that it is, Charlotte needs Drake Powell and they need Raynard. Like, that's something that they don't have. So I think that's a good pick. As far as who Boston picked up, who did Boston pick up in the second round?
Cam Jones, the senior guard from Marquette.
Yeah, that's a good pickup for them too. He is a bucket. Cam Jones is a bucket.
I think his last game he had 32, 9, and 7, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
he is a killer.
Yeah, him, and I think him and Karaban are Boston type guys. So I think that's a good pickup for them. So
real quickly too, I want to get to this comment. What's the Sabonis chat I'm hearing? For those of you who don't know, the Brooklyn Nets are right now considered the favorites to land him if he is traded from Sacramento. We're at plus 1,600 odds, which is not good whatsoever if you're a gambler like me. So I wouldn't say there's any immediate, like, oh my God, it's going to happen way of thinking. But I think it's a good fit. Like Ice, I know that we didn't speak about it today. It was LBL that we spoke with over on Gary's podcast for a little bit. But the Sabonis fit, it's interesting, right? Because for me personally, as a Nets fan, I think what you need to do is focus on this year's draft. No matter what you draft this year, whether it's pick 1 or pick 7, I think next year needs to be taken seriously in terms of tanking. This year was more of a half-ass. You had Cam Johnson, you had DFS, you had Schroeder. You didn't make any moves at the deadline. Like you didn't try hard enough, right? You see Utah sitting every single player they have on the roster every single game. They're going to be a bottom 2 team with the floor of being the 6th worst team in terms of the pick that they get, right? Because if you land the first pick, the worst pick you can get is 5. If you land the second pick, the worst pick you can get is 6. It continues down the list, right? If you get 4, the worst pick you can get, I believe, is 7 or 8. So to me, when it comes to Sabonis, right, draft the guys that you draft this year. Like I said, no matter if it's number 1, number 7, draft the guys you draft, be aggressive in the draft, make a trade up, try to get 2 lottery picks, see how those players play to start the season, right? Bring back Cam Thomas. If you bring back Day'Ron Sharpe, great. If you draft his replacement, great. See how these guys play. And if they overachieve like they did this season to start the year, that's when you start looking at Sabonis, right? I don't think Sabonis gets traded this offseason unless if he demands the trade and says, I want to go here, then it'll happen. But if you overachieve to start the season, by next year's trade deadline, I agree, go after Sabonis. Because if there's no world of getting a top 4 pick, then fuck it. Like, if I'm not top 4 next year, I don't want it. I don't care. But if you are bottom tier, bottom 5 in the league, close to being bottom 3, injuries, not looking good, young players not developing properly, bottom out. Don't go for Sabonis. That's my personal thoughts on it. I wouldn't rush anything. I wouldn't rush it for Zion. I wouldn't rush it for LaMelo. I wouldn't rush it for Sabonis. I've even said I don't want Giannis. I'm very set in stone on making this a 2-year rebuild because I think if you draft in the top 5 this year and if you draft in the top 4 next year, your rebuild's done. You then have remaining assets. You can move on to move guys like Claxton or Cam Thomas for superstars, right? If you want to add a superstar next to the big 2 that you have that you drafted, forming a big 3. That I'm all for. But for this year and next year specifically, I am solely focused on the draft. So I hope they stay with what they have because you didn't trade a premium package for your 2 first-round picks back just to waste them. That's my thought process. Ice, what are your thoughts on the Sabonis rumors and what they're doing moving forward?
Rumors are rumors. Don't nothing happen with rumors. You know what I mean? But I agree with you. If we draft in 5 rookies and they underachieve, I mean, usually you don't win too many games with 5 rookies or how many you draft. So you're going to be a low bottom team. So I would think there's no reason to get any one of those guys. But like you're saying, if they happen to overperform and we looking like we could do something, then I think that's when you start looking at a Zion or a Sabonis and start thinking about doing other things because now you know what the players that you drafted could do, and you just move on from there. But if you don't, then yeah, you got a chance at Peterson or the Bouncer or Nate Mint. You know what I'm saying? I take a chance on one of those.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Like I have been all for trying to make this a 2-year rebuild as long as possible. I would do despicable things, to say the least, if there's a world where you draft Dylan Harper this year and then you draft AJ Dubbanstead next year, or if you draft Cooper Flagg or Ace Bailey this year and you draft Aaron Peterson next year. I would do despicable shit to make that happen. So I'm just going to leave it at that. But to answer your question, I hope that answered it. Kasparas will be steal of the draft. What do you think? I'm not as high on Kasparas as some people are. Like, I personally think Jeremiah Fears, Kaman Malawak, Trey Johnson, the top 3 picks, VJ Edgecombe. I think all those guys have more upside. I think Nolan Traore at 17, where we currently have him, I think he has more upside than Kasparas, simply because he was a top 5 projected player who struggled overseas, but has a lot of untapped potential. I think Traore has maybe more potential than Kasparas. I have to see some more consistency from Kasparas before I say that I think he's a potential steal of the draft. I mean, if I'm looking at our board right now currently, based on pick value, I think probably Derek Queen or Igor could be the steal of the draft, just based on pick value if we're talking lottery. But if you're talking about player, I think VJ Edgecombe at 4 or Jeremiah Fears at 6 or Trey Johnson at 8 is your potential steal of the draft in terms of just lottery picks, right? So in terms of the pick value, one of the later picks I think is what it is. But in terms of the player's upside, I think it's VJ, Fears, or Johnson. I'm not as high on Kasparis though as some people have been, to say the least. So moving on back into the second round, Brooklyn is up at pick number 36. We've drafted 2 wings. We've drafted Jeremiah Fears. We've drafted Derek Queen. Noah Penda's still on the board. Ian Jackson's here. And listen, I think Ian Jackson's a good player. I just think I think that he's going to have a similar issue to what Cam Thomas had on his draft night, which was he's a primary scorer that is mediocre on defense and every other aspect to his game. And I like Ian Jackson a lot. He's got a lot of untapped potential. I think wherever he goes, he's going to be very good. But I don't see him being the fit to what Brooklyn needs, especially with Cam Thomas currently on the roster. And a player who's been linked to Brooklyn a ton is Dink Pate. And that's who I'm going to take here. 6'8". He is considered to be a point forward, a guy that can play the point guard position. He can play the forward position. Kind of a do-it-all type of player. He hasn't really been consistent in the G League, but as a G League guy, he's been playing there for 2 years. I think that him and the Jordy Fernandez connection that he currently has is something that they can really look to develop and properly make into the point forward that they want. So I think Dink Pate, a guy who's been on many draft boards and mock drafts to Brooklyn, I'm going to keep him there at 36. I think it's a very good value pick. Before the season began, he was considered to be in the 23 through 27 range. So I have him here going at 36 to Brooklyn. And with Philly up next, this is where it could be very interesting simply because you need a little bit of everything, right? Paul George is done. Joel Embiid, done. Tyrese Maxey can't do it by himself, and he proved that this year. He's no first option. That is for sure. They don't really have anything else that's exciting outside of Jared McCain. So you've got your point guard, shooting guard combo. I think where they're they kind of just need to go with the best available wing, and I think that's Noah Penda. In a couple of mock drafts, they have him listed early 20s, late first round. But to me, I don't see him going first round, unless if something significant changes with what he's doing overseas. But until then, I'm going to keep him here at 37. Not much knowledge to his game. I haven't been able to watch a game of his, especially with him playing overseas. It's much more difficult to watch these guys. But I just don't see him being the first round pick as some mock drafts have him going. So I'm going to keep him at 37 to Philly. And to Sacramento, this is where, once again, it gets a little interesting. They have Zach LaVine, they have DeMar DeRozan, they have Malik Monk. They're really not a team that needs a guard. Like, they have guards left and right, but they also have Valanciunas, they have Sabonis. Like, there's really not many players here that make a ton of sense for them. So I think they have to go best available. I'm going to go Ian Jackson here to Sacramento. Like I said, the upside is there. He averages less than an assist a game, 13.5 points and 48% from the field. If they want a flashy scorer who could be really good in this league, it's worth taking the risk on them, especially with them potentially rebuilding. So I think Ian Jackson at 38 makes a ton of sense. San Antonio is up here. And again, French connections, they need a center, knowing that Wemby's dealing with some blood clot issues. And what better way than grabbing another Frenchman in Joan Beringer? I'm hoping I'm saying that right. This is the first time I'm saying his name out loud because he has been flying up draft boards. On Fanspo, they actually have him listed at 90, and that's from the No Ceilings draft board, but that's before his name started getting brought up significantly in mock drafts. So a lot of people have him going within the first 5 picks of the second round. Some people have him going as early as pick number 22 from one mock draft that I saw. I'm going to keep him here at 39. Again, the French connection with San Antonio. And again, a guy that can kind of help Wemby, especially if he's going to be missing some time due to his health issues. Haven't been able to watch a single game or highlight on him, so I'm not going to bullshit you on any, analysis. But overall, I've heard great things from him. I'll have to catch a game at some point soon. Toronto at pick number 40. So we are already 9 picks, 10 picks into the second round. They drafted Kaman Malawak. They have Emmanuel Quickly. They have Brandon Ingram. They have RJ Barrett for now, who could potentially be traded. I think a perfect fit for them here is Miles Byrd, especially if they do look to move off of RJ Barrett, right? You would have Emmanuel Quickly, Miles Byrd, uh, Brandon Ingram, Scotty Barnes, Jakob Poeltl, Kaman Malawak. It's definitely an intriguing team. Byrd hasn't really been too consistent as a scorer. He's shooting 38%, which is not great, but he has shown that he can shoot the three very well on high volume. And I think that's something that a team of Brandon Ingram and Scotty Barnes are going to need, right? Two guys who aren't really incredibly efficient from three. I think there's ways to work around his inconsistencies. A couple of mechanic tweaks that he may need, but that's something that the NBA does really well with developing. So I think Miles Byrd here at 40 is another good spot for him. Again, a guy that was projected in the mid-20s not too long ago. OKC's up here, and as you can see, I've pretty much completely abandoned the potential to do trades. I need more time to think about trades, in all honesty. I'd more so do those on my own. So once again, if you aren't following, make sure to follow my college basketball page at CBB Draft U. That's where all my best ideas go. So if you want the most up-to-date stuff in terms of mock drafts, trades, go over there, because my brain can't think when I'm talking for this long. OKC, though, at 41, we'll probably trade one of these, actually, just because they have 2 second-round picks, and there's no world where they should be drafting 2 second-round picks. So we're going to try and find a team that may not have picks. Let's see. You know what? I could see Detroit being one of them. Detroit, we're going to give them pick 41, and we're just going to say it's for a future, second rounder or two. They got Alex Caravan with a 35th pick. They move up into the second round to get 2. I can see Darren Williams, another junior out of Texas Tech, averaging 15 points, 4 assists, 5 rebounds. I think this is a perfect fit for them. Once again, it brings that Detroit gritty bully style of basketball, and that's exactly what Darren Williams does. That's what a lot of Texas Tech players does over the years. So I think that's a nice spot for him at 41. At pick number 42 is the Golden State Warriors. And this is where I can see them going with a potential point guard. Only problem is they do need a big man. And I think this is also where you can see a guy like Rocco Zikarsky go. So it's a little tough. They could go Kalkbrenner because they're contending. It really depends. Ice, what do you think here? Golden State at 42. Are they going with Kalkbrenner or are they going with Rocco Zikarsky?
I'm not even sure which one they would even go with. Their style is Draymond, so I'm not, they do have another big, so
they got Kevon Looney, who's an expiring contract.
Yeah, he's 6'10". He's slow. He's kind of slow. So they could go either way, but I think they would probably go with the shot blocker and Kalkbrenner.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think Zikarsky has the upside, but with Jimmy Butler and Steph Curry having such short windows, Kalkbrenner as a senior center, plug in right away. I agree with that. Kalkbrenner at 42 to Golden State. Orlando's back up here at 43. They've already gotten Rasheer Fleming. They've gotten Nick Clifford. And this is where I can see them going with somebody with more upside. Usually I would have them select point guard, and I actually am still leaning that way. It's kind of hard to pass up. But I also don't know if I see Cannon Catchings falling this far. He was a guy who was projected early second round with a ton of upside. A lot of people thought that he could have been first round potential depending on how he played at BYU. He hasn't been incredible. If you look at his stats, just 7.5 points, no playmaking to his game, minimal rebounding at 6'9". I can definitely see him slipping further. So, you know what? We are going to stick with the point guard theme for Orlando. And I'm going to go with Tahad Pettiford out of Auburn, leading the national number 1 ranked team in the country, averaging 11 points. I think it's a solid pick, especially if they do look to move off of Cole Anthony. Another guy who can just get it done on both ends of the floor. He's undersized at 6'1", But like I said, I think they're definitely in a position where once you draft the wings that are just NBA ready, like Nick Clifford, like Rasheer Fleming, you can kind of go with a younger guy at the point guard position. OKC's at 44. I'm not going to have them trade back again. I'm going to have them take Isaiah Evans. I think, actually, no, I'm going to have them take Cannon Catchings. Again, like I said, they're a team that just drafts best upside and has no remorse for it whatsoever. So Cannon Catchings at 44. Again, the stats are underwhelming, but a guy that you can just sit for a year, develop, and he'll probably give you a 40-point game at some point in year two, because that's what OKC does. Dallas at 45. Again, they're in a position where they don't need too much because of how much they have. But I think this is a solid fit here. They have Daniel Gafford, they have Derek Lively, but at some point they may look to move off of. Now I'm thinking. Ice, now I'm thinking, man. See, this is the problem once you get late into the second round and you've been talking for an hour. You start to see things, right? We got Ben Seraph there, who can play the 2 guard, he can play the 1 guard. But there's another player on the board who I do think has a sneaky connection with what Dallas is looking to do, and that's Isaiah Evans. So if you're the GM, if you're Nico Harrison, so protect yourself at all times, do you go with Isaiah Evans to Dallas or Rocco Zikarsky?
I'd probably go with Evans, but if I was the team before, if I was OKC, I'd have probably took Evans for more shooting just in case, but I would take Evans for Dallas.
All right, sold. Isaiah Evans going to Dallas. I think it's a great fit, and again, the Duke connection with Kyrie, he loves his Duke guys. So they got Derek Lively also over there at pick number 46. And this is a no-brainer for me. I don't even have to think twice. They need a big man because Vucevic is on his way out. Rocco Zikarsky going 46 to the Chicago Bulls. Getting Trey Johnson and Zikarsky to me is a great draft for them. It's a great value draft as well. Trey Johnson, a guy that could potentially go top 5, you get at 8. Zikarsky, a guy that could potentially go picks, 37 through 42, you get at 46. I think that's a good pick for him. I have him at 46 on my draft board, but I think overall that's a really good pick. And this is where the draft board ends with Josan. So we're going to actually have to look down here for some potential other picks. As you can see, the draft board gets very slim after the halfway point of the second round. And it looks like they actually updated their draft board because Hunter Salas is now at 71. He was usually projected mid-second round. Jameer Watkins finally making his way back up. He's one of my favorite seniors in the country. John Mobley is officially finally out of the top 40. Thank God. I was never a fan of him. KJ Lewis somehow at 89. I mean, there's a lot of overseas guys based on what I'm looking at that are starting to build up in this draft class. So I'm going to kind of stick with some of the players that I know, even though there's a lot of guys here that you're starting to see, simply because I'm just more used to them. But at pick number, 46? 47. They got Dylan Harper. They got Asa Newell. They kind of need a big man, but there's really none available. I can see them going with, let's see.
The V6 brothers are not in there?
They are, but they're really far down.
Oh, okay.
Like Zavonimir probably is going undrafted, if not staying a second year at Arkansas. Like even Mackenzie McCobuck over here. Like, how do you have him at 95? Interesting. I haven't seen the new draft board until now. Peyton Sanford at 106. That's a guy that I usually have in my mid to late 40s. Tucker DeVries. You know what? Yeah, give me him. I don't know if this is an updated draft board or just names in. Oh, it looks like it's names in alphabetical order because it's my draft board. All right, so that makes more sense. So don't worry about the rankings. It's not actually where they're at. For 47 with Utah, I really like the idea of Peyton Sanford here. I mean, the description fits perfectly, if you know what I mean. 16 points, 6 rebounds, inefficient, a senior. But again, you know why he's going to Utah. So yeah, I got Peyton Sanford. But jokes aside, he actually is a very solid player at Iowa. I believe he's hurt right now. So he'll slip in the draft. He was a guy that could have been early second round. if he kept up at the pace that he was going. Efficiency needs to be a little bit better, but a guy that you can plug in. And Utah is not really a team that needs a lot, but also needs a lot. So I think Sanford as a backup wing, as a floor spacer, is just a solid move. Washington here, they're going to have 2 picks now within the next 2 picks, or within the next 3 picks, I should say. At pick number 48, they have Ace, they have Nolan Traore. I definitely see them needing a big man. And here's where I can switch it up a little bit, I guess, because once again, I'm not too familiar with guys like Clifford here. Floyd Badunga is a guy that I really think has a lot of potential, but at Kansas, he just really hasn't performing the way that I thought he was going to. How about Brandon here? 6 points for, yeah, like again, a guy that I don't see being above a lot of the guys that we have here. Let's check centers. I think that that's the route that they were going to take, but there's really not many centers available because we've drafted all the good ones. Magoon here, yeah, it makes sense. I usually have him going around this slot as well. So Magoon Guath out of San Diego State. The stats underwhelming, but a solid player all around. I've only seen a couple of highlights from him, but at 7 foot, with Walker Kessler being questionable with his future there, I can definitely see that being a solid pick for them. At pick number 49, they already have Boogie Flan, so Joe Son's going to continue to fall in this one, unfortunately. It's tough to really predict where they're going to go, right? Because if you look at their roster, they have Kawhi still for 2 more years after this. James Harden for a year after this. Norman Powell for a year. Like, they have guys under contract. Out of their youth, they got Cam Christie as a shooting guard. They got Marjan they just got recently. That's small forward. Amir. So their 2 guards and wings are kind of filled. So I could see them going. They got Boogie, so we're not going to need to go point guard. I could see a player like Alex Tui going here. Maybe, let's see. It definitely messes up the way that I was doing this draft because of the big board, because now it's just alphabetical order everybody. But trying to scroll through these names and see what I think is a good fit here. Because this is what, pick 50, if I'm not mistaken, right? 49. Let's see. Yeah, may take a second to find. Actually, you know what? No, Mackenzie Makuba, right there. I like that pick a lot for them. At 49, he's averaging 12 points, 4.5 rebounds. Very versatile player, a good 3-and-D guy. I absolutely love that pick for them there. Let's see. Yeah, this is going to definitely get a little bit harder and take a little bit longer to get done now that the big board's done. But Washington back up at 50. Yeah, I just give it to them. I mean, they're so bad they need anything, and Joe Son slipping to 50 I don't think has any realistic possibility. And now that I see that, I want to give him to Indiana. Oh, Jesus. Yep, I'm going to flip it. Sorry. Just based on the team fit, like, I need to give Joe Son to somebody that actually needs him. So Washington, they need more of a wing. I like Alex Tui there, honestly. Tui at 50. Yeah, Tui at 50. So Indiana at 51 will go Joe Son. I like that pick. Again, I don't think he slips to 51, but in terms of this one with the players that we've drafted, I have him between that like 43 through 47 range. It wouldn't be a surprise if he slips 4 spots. A very shifty combo-like guard out of Arizona State. And again, Indiana kind of needs help at the backup point guard position if they decide to make a move at some point, because they have Andrew Nembhard, Benedict Mathurin, Obi Toppin, guys that they could utilize as trade pieces for a star at some point. And they got to get something going. So at 52, this is where I'm going to go with a little bit of a different route. And again, it could just be I like the player, but I do think that Jamir Watkins has an incredible touch to his game. If you look at the stats, he's a senior at Florida State, 18.5 points, 2 assists, 5 rebounds, roughly 43% from the field. He just screams Cleveland, because why not, right? They're contending. Go after a senior. Florida State always produces really solid players. I mean, Scotty Barnes came out of there. But as a 4-year senior at Florida State, he's played well every season. I really can't complain. Like, I'm an FSU guy for football, so I do watch basketball for them as well. But he's just a perfect example of a 3-and-D player. That's really to keep it short. Like he is a very good fit for what Cleveland currently needs, which isn't much. Memphis here at pick number 23. And again, we're going based on alphabetical order now, so it's going to be a little tough. I'm going to try and be a little quick here. Let's see. There's Zavonimir right there. Tucker DeVries here. Yeah, it makes so much sense. It does. I mean, who's the next pick? Because it's the Knicks. Yeah. Tucker makes so much sense. He is a lights out shooter at West Virginia. Currently averaging 15 points on 41% from the field. Again, a guy that can space the floor. He knows his role. He's going to be a good role player. And in Memphis, why not, right? Like I said, towards the later end of the second round, I'm still studying my guys, trying to figure out which placements are good for which. So you're going to see a lot of different changes in the second round. But the Knicks here, KJ Lewis on the board, you got to give it to them. They need depth, and this is a guy that can give that to them. 6'5" shooting or 6'4" shooting guard, averages 11 points, 3 assists, 4.5 rebounds. He could be a playmaker off the bench as well, shooting 45% from the field. And this is the next pick as well. It's forfeited. But we are going to try and keep it realistic by taking a player that I would actually pick here. And for that, I'm going to give them Jalen Lowe. Again, another guard, but somebody that I can see being a fit for somebody if it was at this pick range. Actually, you know what? No, I'm giving them Hunter Silas just because that makes even more sense. A senior, a guy that they could utilize right away. But like I said, the pick's forfeited, so unfortunately, as a Nets fan, fortunately for us, but unfortunately for them, they can't use that. And by the way, real quickly, too, before we finish off the rest of this draft, shout out to the 90 of you that are in here. Make sure to subscribe to us if you are new on YouTube at the Nets Press Podcast. Also, make sure to follow my college basketball page if you want the most up-to-date source for all things college basketball. That's called CBB Draft U. And make sure to follow my Nets page, Nets Press. If you haven't noticed, that's me. I'm the asshole that speaks on Twitter. So if you want the most up-to-date source for all things Brooklyn Nets, follow me at Nets Press on Instagram. The Lakers here at 56, and I mean, this is just an absolute steal for them if they get him here. And it's kind of fitting too. Family-friendly background with the NBA. If I can ever find him. Come on. Show me. Yep, there he is. Stojakovic, the son of Peja, and absolutely killing it at Cal. 16.7 points, 4.6 rebounds, 41% from the field. It's self-explanatory. He's a great fit next to Luka, a guy who can come off the bench and light it up for them. And that 57, this is where I'm going to have Phoenix go with their big, and that's going to be Floyd Badunga out of Kansas. Again, underwhelming season at Kansas. Most of the time, Kansas guys go all 4 years. But he's got upside, and I think Phoenix, again, just needs any form of help at positions of need. He's only 6'9", which could be a little bit of an issue. But overall, I think it's just what they need at this point. Orlando at 58. I guess I'm just going to give them best available because I don't see them selecting 4 picks in this year's draft. And let's see who that'll be. You know what? I'm going to give him a high upside. I'm going to go Carter Bryant here. Again, an underwhelming season at Arkansas. 8 points. He was a guy who was projected first round at the beginning of the season, but has the upside to do it. Hopefully he can figure it out because he was very fun to watch in high school for a little bit. And the final pick, Mr. Irrelevant, at number 60. We'll go over the first and second round real quickly, and then we're going to head out. I'm going to give Houston Donnie Freeman. He probably shouldn't have fallen this low. And again, you're going to notice a lot of guys' names that are still on the board who probably should not get drafted, but that's how deep this draft class is. Donnie Freeman at 59, and I mistakenly said Mr. Irrelevant thinking it was pick 60. That's going to be Cleveland with Mr. Irrelevant this year. And I'm going to give them I'm going to really try and figure out who I think would be the last pick, because there are a ton of players on this board who should not be here. But again, that's just how it's going to be with this draft class. Starting from the top, I'm a big Baba Miller guy. Aaron Scott has a lot of potential as a high caliber defender, playing at St. John's. Who else is here? Jalen Lowe, I mean, he's definitely getting drafted. So at some point, we probably should have found somebody to take the point guard. But In this one, we're not going to have him go because we already had Cleveland. I mean, actually, you know what? Yeah, Mr. Irrelevant, Jalen Lowe. He's definitely not going to 60, but he'll probably be in like the early 50s, mid 40s. But that's the draft. Like I said, the second round's a little difficult to kind of fully predict. So we'll get a little better with that as the season progresses and as we do some more studying on this class. But here it is, the first round. Cooper Flagg, Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey, VJ Edgecombe, Kaman Malawak, Jeremiah Fears, Con Kneppel, Trey Johnson, Kasparis, and Colin Murray Boyles rounds out your top 10. To finish off the lottery, you got Liam McNeely, Derek Queen in a trade up to Brooklyn, Austin Noel in a trade up for Utah, and Igor Demon to Atlanta. With the remaining first round picks, you've got Rasheer Fleming to Orlando, Noah Sengu to San Antonio, Nolan Traore to Washington, Hugo Gonzalez at 18 to the Minnesota Timberwolves, 19, Ben Saraft to Dallas, Jace Richardson going to Miami at 20, and at picks 21 through 30, you got Danny Wolf, LeBarian Filan, Carter Bryant, Thomas Sorber, Ado Fiaro, Janai Broom, Nick Clifford, JT Top, and Boogie Flan, and Will Riley. And again, the realisticness towards the second round kind of ends where my big board ends, which is at pick 46. Realistically, I'm still building out the rest of the big board, which is why it cuts off at that 46th or 47th pick. But here you have it. Cam Jones going first overall in the second round to the Celtics. Maxime at 32 to Charlotte. Yaxel Lendenborg to Minnesota at 33. Drake Powell at 34 to Charlotte. And again, you guys can see the names of the team, so I'm not going to say the full thing. But Alex Caravan at 35. Dink Pate, Noah Penda, Ian Jackson. I'm not even going to try and butcher his name again, but you see it there. Miles Bird at 40. And then at picks 41 through 47, which is where I'm going to cut it off, Darren Williams to Detroit, Ryan Kalkbrenner at 42, Tahad Pettiford, Kenan Catchings, Isaiah Evans, Rocco Zakarski. That is where my big board ends, but outside of Josan, which I had him slip to a better team that fits his need. And then you guys can see the rest of the second round right here. Peyton Sanford, Magoon, McKenzie, Alex Tui, Josan, Jameer Watkins, Tucker DeVries, KJ Lewis, Hunter Salas, Stojakovic, Badunga, Carter Knox, Donnie Freeman, and Jalen Lowe. We're going to get better with the end of the second round, like I said. But overall, ICE, looking at this entire mock draft, 1 through 10, what are you giving it rating-wise? Be brutally honest, because I know that second round, towards the end of it, absolutely sucked.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough going at the end of the second round. A couple of guys I didn't even know. So, you know what I mean? Like, it is what it is. But as far as I would say, like, the first round and a half, I think it was solid. I say like an 8-9 still, with players going that I knew. You know what I mean? Well, I'm a big Magoon go off. I think I would love the Nets to draft him. And you're a Bob Miller fan too. I hope he goes undrafted so the Nets can pick him up too. And I hope they do. I hope they do. Yeah.
I definitely agree. For me, I'd probably give this an 8 out of 10 just because, again, I think the first 46 picks are pretty accurate to what you can see players in the range of pick range where they're going. Like I said, I'm still doing my part and trying to figure out the rest of the second round. The biggest problem with the middle to end of the second round is there's so many prospects that deserve the chance to be drafted, but there's probably going to be about 10 to 15 guys that don't get drafted this year who genuinely have a chance at roster spots as undrafted rookies. So it'll be interesting to see how the rest of that formats. You'll definitely see a little bit more of a solidified end to the second round, probably once March Madness starts in about 2-3 weeks. So we'll get back to it then. Let's say the next episode for this will be in 2 weeks. Hopefully we get a better idea of what the second round looks like. Iceman, I appreciate you for joining as always. We'll be on Gary's, I believe, not tomorrow, but the day after. They're going to be doing a coverage before the game, and I'll be on later that night to do the live coverage of the live game. So hopefully we see you there. Appreciate you for joining, man. Do you want to plug in any of your Twitters, social medias, anything?
No, I'm good. Y'all know where to find me at. Iceman the Dawn on Twitter. Holla. Appreciate you having me on.
Of course, brother, man. Appreciate you for joining as well. Make sure to follow me on Instagram at NetsPress for all your up-to-date source on all things Brooklyn Nets. Make sure to follow the new college basketball page as well, CBB Draft U. That's also on Instagram. If you're watching on Twitter, make sure to follow there, Nothing But BK, or BK Nothing But Nets podcast. I got to get used to that name still. And if you're watching here on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to us at the Nets Press podcast and also at the BK Nothing But Nets podcast over on YouTube. Appreciate you guys for joining in, man. Ice, again, thank you. And we'll see you guys next time. Later.
Yeah. All right.
Don't miss a tweet, post, story, or video. 3D Boxing is on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Hit the subscribe button now to stay inside the ring.